chairperson has not yet arrived. Please try your call again later. You are being placed into conference in listen-only mode. There are 6 participants in the conference.
Okay, folks, it's 11 o'clock. Marijuana Board is coming back to order. Nome, wrap up this afternoon. The next thing on the agenda is the application for 360training.com Incorporated for the Alaska Marijuana Handlers, of course. So is 360training.com on...
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
360 Training. Are you out there? We'll give them just a couple of more minutes. If we hear any beeps, we'll just hang loose here for a few minutes because they're talking on 48. Okay, let me, one more time, there's 360training.com on the line for your marijuana handler card application and card course application. Yeah, it's pretty, there's a beep. Okay, are you able to hear this marijuana control board? Can you hear us out there? There's some people beep.
Yeah. I can hear you.
All right.
Yep, we can.
Okay, we're looking for 360 training. We'll give it a couple more minutes. Okay, 360training.com. Are you on the line? All right. What are we going to do here? We're going to try a couple of regs. Get through a couple of them.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, let's move on to another tab.
Yeah, let's
and
go
then come back to these guys.
You bet. Okay, so we've got several for those of you that are keeping score at home, we've tabled on-site consumption. The revised draft of board consideration has been tabled until our June meeting, which kind of scheduled it out for our October meeting. And we've got we have 6 regulation projects here that some should go. So let's go to tab 63, which is plant count for new cultivators.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
To put a motion on the table, I would move that the board put these proposed regulations as written out for public comment.
Okay, is there a second? Second. Motion by Mr. Jones, second for discussion by Mr. Miller. I guess we'll return to the director on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple meetings ago, the board opened a regulations project to put into regulations language similar to the policy that was adopted in, I believe, July of 2016, regarding what a new cultivation facility may start with in terms of bringing in plants and clones that were not entirely they came from, but then they come into the tracked system and remain tracked. So we started with that, and then there was discussion about how to implement AS 1738. Sorry, just one sec. 1738 070B6, which says that a licensed marijuana cultivation facility is permitted to receive seeds or marijuana plants from a person 21 years of age or older. And I think there's been some disagreement on how that's been sort of handled. My understanding was that the regulations put boundaries on that, and that was that you got those things for the start of your cultivation facility, and then once you'd been inspected, all your product had to come from essentially another cultivation facility. So we've added into this regulations project a proposal that will allow cultivation facilities to receive new genetics. The concern is bringing in new genetics so that you can have new strains and that sort of thing. And so there's a proposal that would allow a new strain to be introduced after written approval by the director on a form prescribed by the board, so that a cultivation facility could receive not more than 6 clones or cuttings from a person 21 years of age or older without compensation, or not more than 10 seeds from a person 21 years of age or older without compensation. So that's kind of what's essentially new within this regulations project. I had a couple questions for the board at the bottom of my memo, which is myself, the director, that's approving these, or should it be the board? And then my second question is, should there be a limit on how often this can be done? If a cultivation facility is doing it every day, is that an issue? I'm not saying it is or isn't, it's just something for the board to consider. Based on some testimony we received Wednesday morning, I would suggest to the board that you consider adding into this project an amendment to 306-730 on the marijuana inventory tracking system to clarify that the tracking system is intended to be a seed-to-sale tracking system, and that seeds should be tracked when they are seeds, because my understanding of the intent of this entire program is that all marijuana is tracked in the legal system, and seeds are included in the definition of marijuana. So that's something just for the board to consider. And I have about 5 minutes before I have to step out.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I actually like the idea of the introduction of the strain the way it's done with the clone and the seed. And given that if especially with a clone, we wouldn't want a cultivator wanting to introduce a new strain have to wait 2.5 months for the board to work through a process. So I was appreciative of the question and the way it's written that you could approve those strains. It would sort of be similar to the inspector going out and seeing what was there and saying yes, you can now have your license. I didn't have any trouble with that. I'm not sure how to answer the limit on the strain. I mean, my first thought, if I remember correctly, people were talking about, if you start a seed or you start a clone, 3 to 4 months before you have mature plants or plants ready for harvest. So it seemed to me that if they were going to introduce a new strain, they would want to see what that product looked like. So my first thought was, one new strain every 6 months. I don't know if that's appropriate or too light or whatever, but that was my first thought. So I would just throw that out that we were going to limit the introduction to be, once every 6 months, or no more frequent than 6 months after the previous approval. But I always throw that out. Otherwise, I really did appreciate the work here.
Go ahead.
The limit thing I hadn't really considered, but I would tell you as a limited cultivator, I might want to bring 3 strains in this month to test them, and then wait 3 to 4 months and end up getting rid of 2. So I'm not really thrilled by 1 strain every 6 months, because it would take me 6 months to figure out what I just grew isn't worth a crap. I wasted 6 months. Then I don't need to use that. But the other question I had was, this is for standard. I read that the other day. It says a standard cultivation. Would we make this good for a limited as well? So I can see me having, three sets of genetics growing together, hopefully getting a decent amount of that in. But if I limit myself to 1 every 6 months, it might take me 12 to 18 months to get a new set of genetics that are actually worth propagating at that point. So,
Mr. Chair, I certainly understand that, and so maybe there's wording in here that, if a cultivator came in and said, I would like to introduce four new strains, and I have 4 separate individuals that I'm going to get the clones from, because I don't think it's under law you couldn't get 24 clones from the same person, given that they're only supposed to have 6, kind of thing, and have somehow defined that as the first 1 of 6 months. So it's not like 1 strain, but if at the same time you're proposing multiple strains, that could be okay. I can't say I want to introduce these next 6, kind of see where I'm going. I understand what you'd want to do. So I would think in that instance on a form, we could define that as being, strain A, strain B, strain C. And if those were approved, then it would be 6 months before you could do L, K, and J or whatever.
As far as the limited cultivation, the powers or the privileges and prohibited acts of a limited cultivation facility are the same ones of a standard cultivation facility in 405, A, B, and C that are here, and then they just have that 500-foot square foot restriction. So they're good for this as well.
I was just going to say, I'd support putting this out for public comment. I don't know if I'd support limiting the strains at this point, but maybe see what the public comes back with, just because I think they probably have a lot more ideas than I do about it.
Yeah, I'd like to give something too. I think of all the regulation projects. This is when we can't get a file of, positive comments, because this is the name of the game. Over the years, we're going to want new strains being not just introduced but developed, and that's kind of what I did envision. Small cultivators doing some of them. And so we got to have that flexibility keep some healthy genetics in our plants and develop strains that can profitable. So I don't think there's too much for us to change up on here. And others may disagree, but I don't have any problem setting up.
Did you want to consider amending 730? To clarify that seeds need to be tracked as well.
Oh. I guess the only question there is number one, does metric have a seed count box?
Yes.
It does have a seed count box. And the other thing is, spill the seed right there, and hope you got every one of them, and we didn't. Metric says you get 50 seeds, you only get 38. Because they spilled or something. Of course, nobody around here spills anything. I don't know. That would be a substantive change to hold this backward.
No, you could amend that. You could even tell us we want you to amend it in this way without even specifying the particular language. We would write it, put it out for comment. You could then adjust it when it comes back to you.
And Mr. Chair, to Director McConnell, I'm not opposed to tracking seeds. We do have a seed to sale system. My question would be how we do it, because as Mr. Springer said, the seeds are small, that you can drop them on the floor, and then what seed was what, that could be problematic. And then my question would also be, in metric, is there a system for, if you started with a particular seed, and you propagated that seed, and then you ultimately didn't want to keep that plant, could you get rid of it while it's still a seed, or does it become a seedling that you would then have to say that you wasted, or how does that work? A lot of times you'll propagate many seeds, and then before they actually become plants by our regulation, you might cull most of them. You normally don't want to take the strongest seedlings
when they're in an immature phase.
When they're in an immature phase, yeah.
You would just waste them.
You just say that seed was wasted, or say that the seedling was wasted, or put a note in there. How would that work?
Maybe Mr. Holster, who I believe is on the line, can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you indicated metric that you've propagated a seed, and then it gets a, well, I guess it doesn't get a plant tag until it's 8 inches. Just gets a badge. Okay.
I guess it all, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, this is James Holster. It all really depends on when you are wasting it. I mean, at any point you can waste out the marijuana, whether it's a propagated seed or seed itself. If the seed looks like it's not going to be able to be grown, if you look at it, if it has cracks or if it has mold on it, obviously that's something that they're not even going to want to try to plant. And there's a notation system where they can waste that out in the system, and if it happens to be a strain of something that they do not want to keep anymore and it's not viable, or it's just something they don't want, they can waste them out in your system and they can mark it as such. As to tracking, yeah, they are small, and we ask that they package them and they track them by weight or by count. And most places do it by count because there's generally between 3 and 6 in each package. And they're fairly easy for us to track, and the cultivators are pretty skilled as to keeping track of them, and if they do spill out and they happen to not find them, there's a mechanism that they can put in that when they were open the package, they wasted out whatever amount fell out, and they're able to input that into metric. There is mechanisms to allow for that type of thing. And I can only say, just say you have marijuana in a glass jar, that you're doing some deli-style serving out of, and that glass jar happens to slip and fall out, and you want to waste out what remains in that jar simply because it's been contaminated and might have glass particulates, you're able to waste that out in the system as well. So there is a mechanism to do that, and it's fairly simple. I don't think it would hinder the cultivators at any point to
include the seeds and the tracking system because that's already what we have them do from the very beginning.
Okay, thanks, James. And while you're on the line, speaking of metric, and Sarah also, maybe the June meeting, can we finally get to see metric?
Mr. Chair,
there's a couple of us that have never seen it before, I mean, maybe for a few seconds. So,
I
haven't talked about that, I have kind of a presentation, but we're in the Atwood, have they been in the Atwood?
Yes, we do have metric actually going to be speaking at that meeting. Investigator Bukowski is also going to be present at that meeting, and he can do a brief summary or work with metric so we're not duplicating what's presented to the board.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. Okay, so what is everybody's pleasure? Do we want to start a project 7:30?
Mr. Chair, I think I would propose an amendment to my motion, which was to accept this draft and to put it out for comment, that we would further direct staff to include language amending 306-730, put it out for public comment, and then I'll leave that as a motion. And speaking to that amendment, that would then give us time to get public comment in, and then we can take it back out in June, or we can amend it after the public comment period.
Okay, there's a second motion.
Second.
Okay, discussion? So the motion has been made originally to put this up for public comment, but now it's been amended to include, let's vote on the amendment. So, vote on the amendment, Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Gremmett?
Yes.
Mr. Miller? Yes. So the amendment passes. So, ready for the motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
may I just clarify the record to specify that requesting or directing staff to include language amending 306-730 would specifically be requesting us to amend it to require that CB tracking metric. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so on the motion, Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Yes. So, again, we're not public comment. Can you mute the phone for a second? Let's just see if, oh, it isn't. Okay, is 360 training online? Are you out there, 360 training? Okay, I guess not. All right. Let's move on to tab 64, which is advertising and promotional activities. This is also a regulation proposal to send out public comment. We have a motion on these set of regulations.
I would motion that we put the regulations project and advertising activities out for the public.
Motion by Mr. Miller, is there a
Second.
Amendment seconded. Okay, so this has been a considerable topic of conversation. Hey, do we have a committee report?
Sure. Eric and I have been working on these off and on over the last couple of months based on comments and things that we've heard here at the board. Basically what this is going to do is make the advertising regulations be applied to all licensees, not just retail stores. Defines better that business cards, merchandise that only contain the business name, logo, location, and contact information are not considered advertising and would not have to have warnings on it. Let me see, where else? The regulation, we can have 3 business signs now today for a retail marijuana store. The number of signs stay the same, although one of them will be allowed to be able to put out somewhere on the lot, so you can advertise your business. The separation from child-related facilities for advertisements has an exemption for established publications, kind of like newspapers and things. You can't really dictate where those go. I don't think there's a lot of other cell phone direct marketing based on location has to be opt-in. You can't just advertise to people in a certain radius of your store. We added some sponsorship types for adult-focused events. I think that's something that a lot of folks have asked for down towards the bottom of the regulation. It talks about sports events, charitable events, competitions, or any other events approved in advance. Says by the board, I would kind of like to maybe put that to the director level for approval. The only thing that I think we didn't cover was what the director mentioned in her note, is maybe we put something on here that promotional activities must be conducted inside the licensed premises. Kind of like, we've seen some of the activities, I think, that got some negative attention about the house and some other things was a promotional activity. But if we limit that to inside the restricted access area, it can't be seen from the public, so it's not really from advertising. But they still have the ability to do promotional activities inside the facility.
Okay, and this is a whole new section of regulation. And just looking at the end, the adult-oriented 21, 30% or more. As long as more than 30% of an event's participants and audience is reasonably expected to be under 21 years of age, licensed marijuana facility may sponsor industry trade shows. So that's interesting, and this also means that a marijuana business could be a sponsor, for example, for an event held inside a licensed alcohol premises, and you have a ban, which is good. And the K, licensed marijuana facility may not encourage the sale of marijuana or marijuana products by using giveaway coupons or conducting games or competitions related to the consumption of marijuana. It seems like there could be some creative ways for stores, retailers to have something that would encourage people to at least come into their store and bite into that, encourage them to buy your marijuana product. But it's so I'm taking it that everybody's had a chance to look at these regulations.
Yeah, I had a question related to Mr. Miller's last comments about do these regs currently contain that promotional activities have to take place inside?
No, I was thinking that we would ask staff to add that before we went out to public comment.
Okay. And so would we restrict that strictly to retail? And the reason I bring that up is we limit 5 visitors escorted by a single staff person in cultivation, testing, and manufacturing. If their customers, if the store is big enough, you could have 20 customers in there. So if you were going to do a promotional activity and you said these applied to all licenses, would there need to be that limit? Because you wouldn't want to do a promotional activity if you had 3 staff members, you could only limit it to 15 people that all had visitor badges and were all escorted. So that was just a question. So I don't disagree. I think I would support having staff add that. That may be part of a limitation as they write that this only applies to retail because you wouldn't want to have that many people in a grow operation.
I don't think I would personally, but you never know what some folks want to do, right? It might be a new cultivation or a new product manufacturer that's opening, and they might want to host an event for other industry members to come tour the event, take a look around. They could have an event in the front in the office if it's not a restricted access area, and give individual tours to those folks. So, you know, I see what you're talking about, but it's kind of a different promotional activity. It's more, you know, they're a grand opening and they're inviting, you know, 15 retailers to come up and look at the place, and, you know, they may have food and stuff in the front. So that's what I was considering, not a consumer type.
Okay, and I think, you know, I have seen that in other places where there's sanitation issues, you know, bakeries, those kinds of things, where they would, yeah, we'll do this promotion, but, you know, please sign up because we'll only do 10 this half hour and 10 this half hour, so we don't have 25 people walking through food prep area. So, I mean, they could self-limit that a little bit.
Hey, do you need it? Oh, I was seeing what they're talking about. They tabled the on-site.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
So anyway, I guess if there's a motion on the table to put these up for public comment, and I would amend that staff add the restriction on promotional activities to being inside the licensed premise, and let them write that up and then put it out for public comment, and we'll see what kind of comments we got back.
I would accept that amendment. I guess that motion did first time, so yes.
Okay, so everybody in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. More discussion on sending out any additional changes or anything to this set of regulations?
Mr. Chair? Another concern of the staff and the director is that there is not a definition of promotional activities, which I think is really the underlying issue. Some examples that Director McConnell put in her memo include the bouncy house or live bands, and whether those would be considered promotional activities or not. And since you're limiting this on licensed premises with your last amendment, what happens if somebody hires a band but argues that it's not a promotional activity for their establishment or for a 420 event or whatever? So she also would like to have you guys have that discussion on the record.
Well, she uses the specific example of, you know, April 20th. And, you know, the regulations are pretty clear as to what a licensee can do. So you know, if they want to get a crowd out in their parking lot, and you know, we already say in here in where it talks about sponsorships, it says as long as there's an assumption there'll be less than 30% of the participants, people present, will be under 21. We're already recognizing that there may be children around what essentially are promotional activities. So if we, you know, extrapolate from that, then if you've got 100 people in the parking lot of a retail shop on April 30th, hopefully it'll be nice and warm, and they're eating hot dogs and listening to a band, there really shouldn't be any objection to having some accommodation for individuals who might reasonably expected to be there that are under 21. I mean, that's just, if we take, and maybe I'm looking at it way in the wrong direction, but we've already said in this draft of regulation, we've already recognized that it would be, if this regulation is adopted, it would be permissible for a licensee to engage in sponsorship, at least, of events where less than 30% of those expected to be present are 21. So,
All right.
yeah.
To your question. So by limiting the promotional activities to only be conducted inside the facility, the licensed premises, I thought we were taking care of her concerns about people putting bands and things in the parking lot, because that's clearly a promotional activity as long as it's inside inside the facility, it should be out of the view of the general public. Right?
I would bet that we will have licensees saying that a concert is not necessarily a promotional activity, or a band in the parking lot, or a bounce house is not a promotional activity, because there is not a definition of promotional activity. So it's very open to interpretation, which is part of the reason for Chief Holscher's request that this regulation project be opened.
Mr. Chair. So, I don't think that this board should be limiting the ability for someone to have a band in their parking lot. You know, however we define that, you know, I'm okay with. We should put this out for public comment. As Ms. Oates' statement is well taken, and that if we do put that restriction there, then the licensees are going to argue that, well, this just isn't a promotion, and so long as the industry continues to remain reasonably responsible, safe, there's, you know, we're not having police calls or ODs or whatever. I think that it's imperative that the industry be able to participate like any other industry. We should be able to have bands. We should be able to have, you know, sponsor sports teams, that kind of stuff. Just has to be done in a responsible manner. So, however we define that, cool, but it should definitely be something that's on the table.
Mr. Chair, may I just kind of take a piece of Director McConnell's recommendation that promotional activities at least be limited to not to be in a manner that would not be appealing to children, like reasonably appealing to children, or?
Yeah, through the chair to this, I think that would be acceptable to me. I mean, having a rock band is a lot different than having the Mickey Mouse Club, you know. So I would agree.
And Mr. Chair, it's also consistent with your recently adopted resolution.
Yeah. So my rhetorical comments notwithstanding, yeah, I think that we need to stick within our resolution, and we shouldn't be encouraging licensees to be conducting activities that would make kids say, "Oh, Mom, let's stop there." So, what's everybody's pleasure here? We want to get an amendment, a little bit of language amending in here before we send it out.
Mr. Chair, I guess I would maybe ask Mr. Miller and maybe Ms. Oates, if we didn't today noodle through and try to come up with a definition of promotional activities, and we didn't ask staff to do that, but we still put it out for public comment, would it be appropriate to continue the committee and maybe through Mr. Miller and Ms. McConnell work out a definition? We can look at that when we next look at these when the public comments are over, even if that makes us go back out again, but we won't try to noodle through today, because I'm sort of lost at this point, because I try to think back to, you know, and I live in a different town than Wasilla and Anchorage, and these places have our retailers are so small that, you know, a band for a promotion, you know, might be a guitar singer inside on First Friday, like we can fit a two-piece band in the bookstore, but then you wouldn't get any customers in if you made three. So the bookstore has music on First Friday, but they limit the size. None of our facilities are near a parking lot where you'd have a bouncy house. But we have our brewery has been really internal responsible. You know, they won't sponsor things that even our fundraisers to attract adults to raise money for Little League. They wouldn't sponsor that as a brewery. They take some real hard steps. But at the same time, when they come to Slush Cup up at Eagle Crest, you know, probably half of Eagle Crest are under 21. They sponsor that, but you know, they do it pretty quietly. But they have a very restricted access if somebody wanted to drink a beer up there, and it's an event permit that gets permitted through the ABC board and through our police department and that kind of stuff. So I'm torn as exactly what kind of a definition you want for promotion. I don't feel comfortable trying to go through that today. So that would be a suggestion, is to put these out, have the committee continue to sort of work, come up with that, and when we next get this, bring that back, would be my suggestion.
Can we do that concurrently? Can we put it out for public comment and still be working on them?
Absolutely. You can always, the idea of putting something out for public comment is so that you get comment to inform your decision. And when it comes back, you can adopt it, amend it, put it out again, take no action. But I think you're thinking correctly. That's really the point of putting that for public comment.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I have maybe a simple, quick solution. Possibly the board can consider amending K to add a subsection 3 so that the entire sentence would say, a licensed marijuana facility may not encourage the sale of marijuana or marijuana product by providing promotional materials or activities of a manner that would be especially appealing to children.
I don't think that's a substantial change to the regulation as drafted. If it was to be adopted today as a draft amendment, and we then voted to send this out, so. No, so we is there a motion? That is a motion. Okay.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the new line 3 under K, that would essentially be a prohibition. So, any discussion on that? Prohibition is using materials or activities that would be especially appealing to children. Okay, Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rennett?
Yes.
Miller? Yes. Yes, so we'll adopt that. Anything else that we want to beat up on this before we send her out?
I would still think that the committee should continue to work through if there's anything else that needs to get changed before this comes
Ms.
back.
Mills assures us that we are able to do that. Okay, then let's vote on sending this out for public comment. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Lemon?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so advertising is out for public comment. I am going to try to ask for 360 training one more time. 360 training from Texas.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
For your application for a marijuana handler course. 360 training. Okay, I don't hear him. I'm going to mute the phone.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
So that was sort of easy. Recreation or Youth Center is one sentence, one I believe, so let's take that one on at 65.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I would motion that this board put out for public comment regulations, project, recreation, or youth center definition.
Second. Second. That's made by Mr. Evans, second by Mr. Miller. This recreation or youth center means a building, structure, athletic playing field or playground, run or create by local government, or the state to provide athletic, recreational, or leisure activities for persons under 21, operated by a public or private organization licensed to provide shelter, training, or guidance for persons under 21 years of age. This would add a new C that says, but excludes a child care home as defined in 7AAC 57.990. And I believe that is essentially a privately run daycare. Is that what that 7AAC 57.990 is?
And Mr. Chair, if I could speak to the motion.
Sure.
Yeah, so this has been of particularly strong debate in my community. There are a lot of these child care homes in places like Badger Road and some on the outskirts of our city, and it's been debated back and forth whether having a marijuana facility close to one of these places posed as sort of a real risk to the safety and well-being of the children. I've argued in favor of language exactly like this before, and so I'm pleased to see that it's made into a regulations project. So I support the project as written.
And the definition, of course, is right here in the memo. Child care home is defined as a child care facility, usually in an occupied residence, for no more than 8 children. And I know we've had some licensing conflicts in the past because of these sort of facilities. And certainly the intent is not to expose children that are in a child care facility, usually an occupied residency for no more than 8 children, not to expose them to the cannabis industry. But to recognize the fact that these sort of private businesses, in most cases, are kind of ubiquitous and are well protected in their own right. Children are not out walking around. That's kind of the point of this. So is there any other discussion on?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to support putting it out for public comment. I might support putting out for comment, changing that to make sure that by definition we do include child care homes rather than exclude them. What my community has done, and this may not apply to other communities, but basically we have stated that in residential areas where I think if I remember my child care regulations, these have to be, by zoning, you can't have a marijuana establishment of any kind. This applies to concentrate manufacturing, it applies to retail, it applies to grow, it applies to testing. It's overall. You know, if a community allows a grow operation to be in a residentially zoned area, that's their problem, but I don't think we need to remove the protections of child care homes. We want, rather than have a daycare center of 50 or 80, you'd rather have a daycare home of 5 or 6. And if you had 7 of those in 3 blocks near a grade school where parents could drop off their kids, the kids would be there, they could go down to the local park, they could walk. I'm not going to support putting it out for a public comment because I don't want this definition to be there. So for those reasons, and I think through zoning, community can control some of that. But in an occupied home, we allow retail in a multi-use district. Well, multi-use could be downtown Juneau. So if somebody had a 4-bedroom apartment above a store downtown, they could put in a daycare home because that's their home, and there would be a marijuana store down the street, and we as Juneau would have to deal with that. Basically, the majority of these that are actually licensed by the state, because there's a lot of unlicensed out there, but if they were licensed by the state, they would probably be in a child care provider's home. That's why it would be. But I can't support changing this definition to exclude those.
In Anchorage, we have big blocks of residential right next to it. We have commercial, industrial right next to it. We have, I don't know if you've ever pulled a map of in-home child care facilities that are licensed. They're pretty much everywhere. And, they do cause a problem in Anchorage from time to time when we're trying to get a licensed facility somewhere. But, most of them are deep inside the residential area, but it's abutted to a commercial lot or commercial lots. And restricting a license from, in-home child care is typically for very young kids, who don't go out by themselves. They don't, they're under supervision all the time. I don't see how removing this would be a hindrance. If it was a child care home that was maybe working for watching teenagers, which is not practical, then I could see there being a concern. But since the children are so small and always supervised, I don't know how adding this definition could be a negative impact on them. So, my take.
I'll try to take both sides of that. The daycares, licensed daycares, are pretty ubiquitous, except in Bethel where we can use more. But in Anchorage and Fairbanks, they are. I think what we would find by putting this regulation out is we would get an awful lot of testimony, comment from the daycare industry, the child care industry. And they would say, well, why are you, willing to, and they would probably use the word discriminate against us by excluding the same protections that you're offering to recreation or youth centers for our facilities, which have got, a gathering of young children of various ages, and that's, I think, would be a very, very legitimate thing for them to say. The argument, probably from the industry, would be, well, if you throw a rock, you're going to hit a daycare center, and look at how geographically compressed some segments of the marijuana industry are in Anchorage, and in other parts of the state. But that's not our problem. It's not the board's problem to assure that there's adequate real estate available in Anchorage or Fairbanks or anywhere else for somebody to go into the marijuana business. It's up to the entrepreneur to find a place that meets the regulations. Right now, the way this is written, it leaves daycares as undefined. I mean, there's just a little bit of fog here in A and B, and we've seen the results of that. So, one thing that an amendment that could be proposed, I don't know if it would pass today, is to amend B to say operated by a public or private organization licensed to provide shelter, training, guidance, and or care for persons under 20 years of age. And if that was in there, then there would be that definition of daycare centers, which some people feel has a limiting effect on the ability of people to find real estate to operate. But if we put that in there, it would be the exact opposite of what C does. So, this might be one we might want to table until June in hopes that we'll have 5 members and see what happens, because this could be, we could have dueling amendments on this and be a different thing.
Mr. Chair, I was trying to look up what the definition, because 990 is the definition status of the licensed child care. And if I remember my child care home by state licensing is different than a child care center. Our table of permissible uses under our zoning codes has a difference between a child care home and a child care center. It's defined by the number. I think a child care home can't be more than 12, but I think under state rules it can't be more than 8. And I do know that there are As Mr. Miller said, generally the homes are for the younger. Daycare centers will oftentimes go up to age 12, depending on what the parents need. We've had discussions with child enforcement that a rally program, or not child enforcement, but child care licensing, that a rally program in a school, because it's after school, fits the definition of a daycare center. So those rules are, not always sort of clear. And I haven't read it, but as an assembly member, we just got emails from our daycare licensing wanting us to protest the state's change in daycare licensing imposed out in a set of regulations. So all that aside, I just don't want to and won't support eliminating a daycare home from license. I realize I'll be in the minority here, and that's fine. I don't particularly care to table it. I think if it goes out for public comment, we'll get the comments that you say. I just can't support doing it personally, and I won't vote that way.
And Mr. Chair, one more final comment before we vote. My reason for supporting this isn't just because these places are ubiquitous and it makes it easier for the industry if we take it out. I think that's not a very responsible approach. My reason for the support of this is if you look at it from the aspect of public safety, and you look at it as the potential for the industry to impact youth or to gain potential new customers from people who are under the age of 21, I don't think that excluding child care homes either endangers public health or has the ability to incentivize people under 21 to use marijuana, because, like Mr. Miller said, these in-care homes, the children are very young. They're under direct supervision. If the people who are running this home are letting these very young children wander out to where they could potentially see a sign from the marijuana industry, the greatest danger to them wouldn't be that facility. It would probably be being run over by a car, because they don't know they can't cross the road without being hit, and so that is the reason why I support this. Not because just having them makes it tough for the industry, but taking this out doesn't affect public safety. I'll leave my comments there.
Okay, any other comments? And I respect Mr. Jones's position. If this does go out for public comment, it's not the last time we're going to deal with it. And I think I'll support sending it out just in hopes that we will get some robust comment back, particularly from the child care industry. So, are we ready to vote? Okay, Mr. Jones.
No.
Mr. Emmett.
Yes.
Mr. Miller. Yes. And I am a yes to send it out for public comment. So it will go out for public comment. Okay, which brings us to waste disposal. And that's tab 66. So, we got a motion on this one.
Mr. Chair, I would motion that the regulations project waste disposal be sent out for public comment as submitted to us.
Hang on a second.
Second.
Okay, I kind of been driving this ever since I first heard the word Bokashi bucket. And I admit I did not stay in touch with the offices as much as I probably should have through the course of this, because it really doesn't say much about methods. And I think that there should be some flexibility allowed in applications for disposal methods. Now, I continue to believe that the way our regulation is currently written, where it says that any method of board can use is legit. So maybe we'll talk more in the comment process. Does anybody else have anything to share about this? Yes, sir.
I find it hard sometimes to understand how a potential licensee has described their waste disposal. Just looking at the 3 or 4 we had for Matsu, and 2 of them were caught up in the wastewater issue, which has more to do with their septic system, and so the Matsu caught that, and they had to come back in, and one was an operational change, and one was part of an application. And so, I think we heard from Ketchikan that they put in theirs that they were going to take it to their incinerator. We said if it's a licensed incineration, but then they said, no, we don't want it that way, we're going to do it the other way, then they have to change. So the less prescriptive we get in the definition, granted, that leaves us some leeway and maybe opens us up to misinterpretation, but it will not cost the licensee that every time a local rule changes, they have to spend $250 to tell us that their waste disposal has changed. I really think that this is good, and I like the fact that they've added in the issues around the retest as well, because I think that's certainly been an issue, and we had that come up, and then it resulted in a product change. So I think that's real important.
Okay, any comments? All right, to send this 660 package out, Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Emmett?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Yes. So on public comment. And go to F, extended video storage retention time.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I would move that the board take the regulation project extended video storage retention time out for public comment as submitted.
Second.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Everett. Now, this just changes 40 days to 120 days. No other changes in 720E. The enforcement meeting response 40 days is insufficient to properly investigate complaints. And we received reports after the 40-day period has passed on potential violations. So, is there any discussion on this?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I'm going to support putting this out for public comment because I want to hear from licensees how they feel that this is going to affect them. I've heard a few verbal comments that extending from 40 days to 120 days might be extremely costly for some of these businesses. I think we heard a gentleman say that it might cost them $10,000 to comply with this. But instead of just trying to kill it here, I do think it's important to go out for public comment, and so I would encourage anyone in the industry who's listening right now to write some well researched public comment about how going to 120 days might affect your business and whether this is something that is unreasonably infeasible or not.
Mr. Chair, I agree with Mr. Emmett. I'm concerned about cost. So I would just simply ask that if they're going to do the well research as to what the cost might be, what would be the cost if you went to 90 days? Because I know we have had a lot of discussion, as you know. We are in the process of trying to test out police body cameras. And we've had a lot of discussion about the cost of storing all of that video. If a police officer works a 10-hour shift and has his camera on the whole time, and then, 6 months, 5 months, we get a citizen's complaint, or some other complaint, and we have to go back and find that, what the costs were. And I think even our police department was surprised, at least our IT department's cost estimates were well below what we thought they might be. I mean, we were looking at, initial, some people were talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the police department was going, no, it's like half that. It's surprisingly inexpensive, and even if you're, keeping it out there, knowing that the police, if they do have video evidence of anything, once a charge has been filed, you permanently keep that. You cannot get rid of that video. So not only do you have sort of a rotating 90 or 100-day kind of thing, if you have 4 hours of a body camera that's suddenly part of a criminal case, and you keep that 4 hours forever. So it's like evidence, it's like a fingerprint, it's like a hair sample, it's whatever, it's part of the evidence room. So I agree. I don't want to overly burden people, especially small cultivators that maybe bought minimal equipment and what it would cost to increase that. But I would like to know, is 90 days less costly, and we have to make that kind of decision. So I would just ask that they also look at that. Thank you.
Okay, and one of the one thing that came along with the discussion is that of the cost, and remember, police agencies a lot of time are uploading that information, the camera video, to to a cloud storage to affirm that it does that. They're expecting individual licensees to have their own recording resources, so we're talking multi-terabyte storage in some cases. And the issue that came to us was, well, if I could use motion-sensitive cameras, then it would be really easy to find out when somebody has, walked into the store, or walked into the cultivation, or walked into the laboratory, and then see what they've done. If you're not using that, the cameras are on all the time. Now, the store, you want your cameras on all the time. But in cultivation, you may be better off, and it would be more economical as far as storage was to have motion sensor. That's not in here. But maybe something that people are commenting on this, they could bring that up. So
I would support putting this out for public comment, but I'd also like for Mr. Holscher to, bring the number of complaints to us that were brought to us after the 40-day retention period. If we're talking 2 complaints, is it worth we're past the 40 days? Is it worth imposing this much cost and everything in the industry? What are we talking about? 2 complaints, 2 so maybe we could ask Mr. Holscher to come bring those numbers to the next meeting.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Miller, but I'm trying to think back of our last meetings in Anchorage when we were out at the lab. We had a pretty good hearing there about inventory issues, and it got back to weighing or not weighing, But I think if I remember correctly, that there were parts of those activities while people were on vacation, and so Mr. Holscher and the investigator staff found that out, 3 to 4 months after the fact, when the inventory issues started, and there was some tape that you couldn't go back to. So I can think of at least one that has come forward, but I think it would be good to know what the value is. But you also have to remember that since we're in the enforcement business, whether we like it or not, you want to err on the side of maintaining most access to the most potential evidence, and not think that, well, if a problem comes up, then we can change something. It's sometimes easier to keep information a lot longer than you might otherwise, just to prevent the fact that you may end up not having it.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we vote. send it out. Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Yes.
Miller? Yes. So the send video storage 10 times is going out for public comment. Which brings us to date of issuance and handler permit cards. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair. Yes, sir. I would move that we send the regulation project handler permit dated issuance out for public comment.
Second.
Then I would offer an amendment. I think the question that the director asked in the last sentence, it says a person may renew a card issued under this section by passing a written test provided by an approved marijuana handler education course demonstrating an understanding of the course subject. And that's conceptual. I think staff can work on that. But as an amendment, I would like to see that in there to basically state the test will be provided to you by a certified handler card.
There's a second on that?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I can support that.
May I speak to Mr. Nome in a minute? Director McConnell and I talked about this, and there were concerns not just about taking the test, but about the fact that there's that the regulation allows for a certain percentage of questions being missed. And so if somebody takes the test, but the regulations have only the test, and the regulations have substantially changed in certain areas but not others, then a person may miss all of the questions regarding the regulation changes, but still get enough of the questions right to pass the test, and thus would not be learning anything new. So the director and I thought that instead of possibly amending this to just have them, or instead of just requiring that they take a test, instead require that they actually retake the course.
From my Mr. Chair, current TAMs, do they have to retake the course?
Through the chair, Mr. Jones, no, they don't, and we have heard from some providers of alcohol education courses that is an issue.
So they just have to take a test, like sort of how this is written?
That's correct.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
So, if I were looking at this test, or this handler's card, like my paramedic license that I had for 10 years, the requirement was to refresh your courses and not just a test for the exact reason that Ms. Oates describes, because as the AHA, the ACA, or whatever alphabet soup guidelines change, if you just took the test and you can get, a passing score of 70 or 80%, and you miss a new CPR guideline in there, you could be giving patient care that wasn't consistent with that new guideline, even though you passed the test. So I would support having it done similar to the medical system, and that the person must actually take the course and not just a test.
Mr. Chair? Yes. I would then amend my amendment. A person may renew the card issued under the section by passing a marijuana handler's card course, demonstrating an understanding of the course subjects. And then again, that's conceptual. I think it.
Yeah, and I've got another conceptual thing here about that.
You're going to amend my amendment, or
well, no, I'm going to ask counsel. Since you guys are both on the AMIA board, right? Yeah. So AMIA office course. If we only have 4 members here, it's possible that if the amendment was seconded to say that, yeah, you have to take a course to renew, the 2 AMIA board members potentially could have a conflict. They've chosen to declare a conflict on approving course licenses, so I'm wondering if we might not be better off sending this out as is, and then when it comes back, we'll have a fifth member, so we'll have a quorum, even if you two guys are out in the hall smoking cigarettes, at least one of you. Yeah, I'm just trying to. I'd be happy to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That would be fine. It's really up to your decision as a supervisor for the board. As we discussed on Wednesday, it's not a good. You don't want to use a potential conflict of interest as something that would create a situation where you no longer have a quorum. And also, as you know, potential conflict of interest doesn't mean that there is a conflict. And we always expect members of our regulatory boards to exercise their duty in good faith and all of that. So it's really up to you.
Okay, well, let me play the instant replay for a second. So you want your amendment to say that they would have to take a course to
Take a course and demonstrate an understanding of that course, and just like they would the first time around.
Okay. Well, I will second that, and then I don't find that there would be a conflict for either of you two guys to send a regulation out for consideration.
And the only thing I was going to say, based on the director's note, if that's what we want to happen, she basically said we just need to delete the last sentence. A person may renew a card issued under this section by passing a written test. That accomplishes having them take a course. So if we're going to amend it before we send it out, maybe that's what we do.
Through the chair, Mr. Miller, I actually talked to her about that because I was reading through these, understanding that I was probably going to be talking about them for her, and she and I did not talk before she wrote this memo, but that would then require that new handler permit card numbers be issued to individuals, and thus people might have to update their badges for their employees, and so this was my suggestion over her suggestion that she agreed to, by the way.
Well, if conceptually it comes back different, as long as it meets the intent, then I'm fine.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, just to follow up on that conceptually again, I don't think there's an issue with the conflict of interest in voting to put this out for public comment, but when it comes back, clearly you have two members of the board who could potentially benefit financially from requiring licensees to take a whole another course. This comes up in other boards with other training programs where members of the board may have an interest in a training program, but that's another issue for another day.
We good? Okay, then we will vote on the amendment. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Emmett?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Yes. And voting to send the amended package out for consideration for public comment. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Emmett?
Yes.
Mr. Miller? Yes. Okay, so we take care of that. Why don't we take what? Take about 10 minutes. I need to go and print out something downstairs, board business. On the computer, we'll see if the director has come back. If she has not, then I would suggest that we move on to enforcement. I don't know. Well, I kind of like to get to enforcement item C, and we need James more than we need Aaron.
So did you say 10 minutes or 15 minutes?
What would you like?
15 might be safer.
Okay. Mr. Phil, let's go back on the record, and we are going to, okay, Chief Holster, you on the line?
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Okay, and actually, you know what? Let's do this. I'll have James call my cell phone, my number.
Mr. Chair, I am on the line.
Yeah, James, why don't you call my cell phone? It's got a nice loudspeaker on it. I'll put it right next to my microphone. Everybody will be able to hear you. And we won't have any record issues, I hope.
All right, hanging up now.
Why don't you do that, and then we can leave. Okay.
What tab are we going to do?
We're going to do last fire. We're going to do the NOV. Do you have anybody on the phone? Mute the line.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Okay, are you there, James?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. You getting green bars on this thing there? Say 1, 2, 3. James.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, they probably get you. I hope. I'll leave my microphone on. Okay, this is the man. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, sure. Okay. So this is the matter of Alaska Fire Lead License 10307, notice of violation, and this is the opportunity for the recipient of the NOV to address the board, Ms. Noland, and Council, you're represented.
Janet Epstein, Council for Sue Nolan.
Sue Nolan.
Okay, and we have Chief Holster, Chief Enforcement for the AMCO is on the line.
Yes.
Okay, and all the board members are present. Ms. Oates is representing the director who is legislating, and the AMCO is represented by Ms. Oates. You represent the board right now also? Okay, she's representing the board also. So I believe that the Chief, why don't you review the NOV for the record?
First off, you, Mr. Chair, requested that this be the next meeting to give the owner, Sue Nolan, a chance to be present and to respond. And you had a few follow-up questions regarding the investigation that we looked into. But in a nutshell, the NOV was written for minors on premises, and there was log violations for an individual, Mr. JP, that was on premises, checking IDs without a handler card and not signing into the entry log, all of which has been addressed by the NOVs in the response by Sue Nolan's attorney, Jenna Weltzine.
Okay, then we'll let Ms. Nolan, Ms. Weltzine respond.
I'm guessing you haven't had a chance to go through the letter I drafted. Officer Binkowski did a follow-up memo, I think, after my letter, asking some more questions, and I think his memo is in your tab, but I don't think this letter was. So I just want to go through it because I wanted to give you some background on these licensees and how this kind of happened, and I think Sue's understands she did do a violation. She absolutely violated the regulations. And I just wanted to give some background on that.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I just don't know. I'm sorry. I know there's no accusation attached to this at this moment. I'm not sure how far the board really wants to dive into this.
That's good. Let me ask Ms. Yeah, thank you, James. Yeah, that's a good point. Ms. Milks, are we proceeding correctly so far?
So far you are. They want to be heard by the board. They've got to notice the violation, so you can hear what they have to say.
Okay, so you heard Ms. Milks, James?
I heard the first part, but I could not hear her due to the not being near the mic.
Yeah, she said they asked to be heard by the board, and so we're giving them that opportunity right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, please proceed, Ms. Weltzine.
you want me to give you a few minutes to look at my letter? Maybe that would be better.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
Ms. Phillips, after we read this, we'll hear from Alaska Fire Weed. Because it's just an NOV, it would not be appropriate for the board to ask them questions, or would it be?
Mr. Chair, thank you for that question. You certainly can ask some questions. This is their opportunity under the regulations before you and discuss the NOV. If you are moving towards suspending or revoking, then Mr. Holscher, I think, suggested just a minute ago that that would involve the service of an accusation, which hasn't happened. So right now it's really just a time for the licensee to come before you and to respond to the NOV, give you their side of the story. It's a good opportunity for both sides to become educated as to the facts.
All right, thank you. Everybody had a chance to read the letter and the pertinences?
Okay. So Sue and Tony, the previous licensee that was on this license, started this venture around 2014, and then in April they entered into a lease of 2016 and started the business. On February 17, 2017, nearly a year before the anonymous complaint and the pictures were sent to AMCO, Sue and her adult children and her two grandchildren were downtown for the Fur Rendezvous event. As you know, the streets were packed and people were intoxicated, and 2017 was a particularly high year for crime in Anchorage. Sue did make a mistake, and she made a split-second decision as her 3-year-old grandson was saying, I have to use the restroom really bad. They dipped into the store, violation one. They went into the store through the back, and we provided you a diagram attached to the letter to show you the route that they took. And they used the restroom, and while they were in there, Tony mentioned that he had just shoveled the roof, and before the store used to be the boardroom, which is like a snowboard and ski, or maybe not ski, I don't know, maybe it was just snowboard shop, and employees used to go up there to watch the fireworks during this event. So Sue thought, that's a good idea. It's up above everybody. There's not a bunch of drunk people milling around. We're going to go up to the roof. And again, the diagram shows what they had to pass and what was included in those rooms as they went up to the roof. Just for the record, Sue has since this time actually submitted an MJ-14 that's been approved, that whole area that you're looking at that they passed is now unrestricted, because she doesn't ever want to get into the situation again, and none of the marijuana is kept where you passed, where she passed, so it just made more sense for her business. Not long after the retail store opened for business, it became, clear that not all partnerships last forever, and Sue and Tony's wasn't working as they expected that it would. So they started making that ownership transfer for 60% Sue, 40% Tony, and then in November 18, 2017, they did all of the transfer over to Tony, or over to Sue, and that's what you approved on Wednesday, I believe. The T-shirt shop, the clothing shop, NM Enterprises, that was created on August 24, 2016, and on November 20, 2017, Sue was listed as the sole owner. She hired Mr. J.P. Pallet, and his only responsibilities was to the clothing shop. It wasn't to the marijuana shop. He never sold any marijuana, despite what was reported to enforcement. However, 2 violations occurred because of his employment. And one of that was he occasionally did check the customer's ID at the door. Sue, do you know how many, once or twice? 3 to 5 times?
I wasn't there.
Okay. So a few occasional times he did check IDs at the door. And also there was the violation of not signing into the visitor log when he was in that back area and one of those pictures showed. Sue has met with Officer Binkowski. He showed her the part of the regulations that she did violate, and they're in the general part of the regulations, not the retail section, and so she, made that mistake, and it was in good faith, though. She really thought she was complying. The clothing store, NM Enterprise, this was created for selling swag for the company. A lot of companies in this business, consider their regular business expenses, especially retail shops, create a separate company, and you've seen this before, and wrestled with this concept of shared spaces, where they have the clothing shop in a defined separate area with its own point-of-sale system and its own employees for the purposes of mitigating the negative effects of 280E. So 280E is that negative tax code provision that says, if you're engaged in the illegal sale, distribution, and manufacturing of a Schedule I illegal substance, you cannot deduct anything but for that substance, the cost of that good itself. And for retail shops, that's only the marijuana. That's only the marijuana products. So she engaged in this strict understanding that there would be no commingling of funds, there would be no commingling of responsibilities, 2 different operations. Here's where she ran afoul of the regulations, though, is when she had J.P. Pallet ID people at the door because he didn't have his handler card. And you might think, why didn't you just have him get the handler card? Well, if he got the handler card, that could be seen by the IRS as commingling of employees, which would render that entire NM Enterprises as, potentially a related entity, and then they couldn't deduct any regular business expenses. Sue provided a letter from Melvin Vite. He's a CPA, been owner of Vite and Vite for, him and his wife started it 30 years ago, I want to say. 30, 40 years ago. And that's attached with Exhibit C. He never packaged marijuana, despite that picture. He was talking to Sue. He didn't sign it into the visitor log that day, so that was a violation. He never handled the marijuana. He never conducted any sales. But he should not have been checking the IDs, and he should have been signing into the visitor log when he went past into the restricted access area. Again, Sue now understands fully Pallet is never to check identification of customers coming into the marijuana retail store, and she also edited or had revised her MJ-14 premises setting so that if he does come to that area in the back, it's not a restricted access area anymore. So during the spring of 2017, Tony, her previous partner, and another individual began working on a business plan to open their separate retail and cultivation, something that Sue was not a part of. Throughout July and August, there began to be turmoil in the shop, and a lot of employees were having issues, and and there was a lot of things going on that just, it was reflective of a marriage that just wasn't working. You know, a business relationship that wasn't going to last for the long haul. The transfer ownership application was filed in November of 2017, and Will Ingram, who is Tony's new partner, from our information, resigned as manager of the shop. He was the manager of the shop on December 15th, and days later, Amco received some anonymous pictures titled Tony, a.k.a. Fireweed, months from the actual event date of when those pictures were taken, with respect to the kids coming into the shop. That's the dates I'm talking about with respect to those pictures. The only two individuals that have the password to the security system are Sue and Tony. And so whoever sent the pictures definitely waited until the ownership agreements were signed and finalized, and then the transfer legally was complete with Tony. They waited over 9 months, and it's concerning to me, at least. You know, I think enforcement did a really good job with this, but what's concerning to me is the intent of whoever reported this waited 9 months, and if it was that big of a concern to them, they should have submitted it immediately. You can draw your own conclusions as to the motive behind this report, but I just wanted to lay out the background. So on July 2nd, Sue got a call from AMCO. I think it was from Joe. January 2nd, and that was Joe, right? Yeah. So Officer Joe, and he asked her to come in and go through the pictures. And, you know, she understands the seriousness of these violations that took place. And she's put in measures to prevent it. She updated her internal policies, added procedures in her procedures for ID to make sure it's clear that you have to have a marijuana handler permit. She newly designated a restricted access area that allows better emergency egress and ingress more just egress from the store. And that was approved and now is in effect. So the one and only time that minors were on the licensed premises was on February 17th of 2017, not December 27th, 2017. That was when they were submitted. So just want to make sure that's clear. The December 27th date is likely the date the pictures were received by AMCO enforcement, and that is likely why the date appears under the caption of Tony, a.k.a. Fireweed. We will defer to enforcement officers on when they receive the photos. The main point here is Sue understands and is really embarrassed that these violations actually did occur. You know, she's really been a pillar. You know, she's a new client to me, but not a new industry colleague that has been really committed to helping other industry members. I mean, I have clients that before she was even my client would call her and she would give them advice. She just offered, you know, to help the new Nome retail shop. She would help show them how to use metric. I mean, she has been so incredibly helpful and a positive member in this community. I feel really strongly that, you know, this was a one-time mistake. And attached also to your packet that I just gave to you is a bunch of letters. And it's letters not just from industry licensees, it's letters from ancillary businesses and the community council downtown saying, you know, Sue's a great actor. She's been a great pillar in our community, and we've never seen anything bad or funky or weird from Sue. And in fact, licensees have used Sue as a source of education. She understands and accepts responsibility for her actions, and she will accept any punishment that you do deem necessary. The motive in which a person would hold these pictures in their violation for nearly a year before striking anonymously when it was most convenient to them does not excuse the plain and simple truth that Sue messed up. And she wants to do whatever this board deems necessary to earn your trust and respect back. From not just this board, but from the industry, from enforcement, and from the director. You have anything to add?
Yes, I would like to say to hold a permit is a privilege. And I understand that and I respect that. I wanted to really set the standard high, and I think I've done that for the industry. So I messed up. But anybody that's been in Alaska as long as I have, our kids are attached to us. We don't have daycare. we've always taken them into a bar or into a liquor store, and I'll tell you what, it just didn't even dawn on me that I was doing something wrong. I know the state has a responsibility to not influence young people to consume marijuana underage. I know that. I didn't even think anything when, we walked in the back door to go watch the fireworks, and I apologize for that.
We're happy to answer any questions.
On your MG 14 that you've amended, what is now non-restricted area in this?
We have built a marijuana cage.
Well, you had it in there, right? You moved it?
Oh, okay.
Because I know some of us were in your store before it opened.
Yeah. So if you look on the right-hand side where it says marijuana inventory cage, that cage has been extended all the way down. So it's a lock cage. It's only key card access.
It's a package.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chair, if you go to tab 40 and look at two transfer applications that we reviewed earlier this week, then the performance diagram there.
And so this allows better access. The fire department was very happy with this change because the access door on the back part where would be to the left is the only emergency exit for that building. And we're a very large building, so we're right a couple feet that the fire department really wanted to keep that as an emergency exit. So we had to clearly mark emergency exit this way to the back. So then the other side is when you look at the inventory intake station, that restricted access there is when they bring product in, then they can drop it off right there, and then it gets moved immediately over to the marijuana inventory cage, which is locked. So with the change in this diagram then, this allows an NM employee to go use the restroom. So they can move right back in there, use the restroom, and come back out. There's very limited access back there, but basically, we had to provide a restroom for employees. Working under the auspice of two businesses under one roof, which is a tax strategy to prevent the horrible consequences of 280E as us retailers have to deal with. Mitigate.
At the time, Tony still bringing the kids in during the Friday. He was still business park, right?
Yes, that was February 2017.
And he had the marijuana card.
He's my partner, yes.
So I was thinking, how did he get up on the roof to shovel? All right. Do any of the board members have any questions about anything in the SNLB?
Chair. Yeah. So I always give people the benefit of the doubt. Almost all of these NOVs, other than one licensee, I like to try to put myself in your shoes and say, okay, how could I have made this mistake myself? And I usually come to the conclusion that most mistakes are honest ones. And so when you're telling how you arrived at this situation, I'm inclined to believe you. But the combination of having both the bringing the kids on premises and having an employee who was not an employee of the marijuana business but was kind of helping out with the marijuana business, leads me to believe that you really need to pay close attention to what's going on in your facility, because the regs are so strict, and I wouldn't want to see you get penalized for making mistakes. So we just got to know that they're not going to continue.
I appreciate your comment. In fact, Joe and I because I was so under the understanding that anybody could check a marijuana license, and in the retail section, ID, in the retail section, it doesn't say who can and who can't check IDs. And, you know, we were going back and forth with a lively conversation. I said, no, it's right here. And then he says, no, Ms. Nolan, you need to go back and look under the, the Title 700 with the overall marijuana handler's card. And so I really thought that I was not in violation because I only looked at the retail section. And, you know, we talk about having being responsible for knowing the regulations. We're all new in this industry. And, you know, I thought I was acting responsible because it didn't say in the retail section whether you needed a handler's card or not to check ID. So.
But that was a great learning experience, and Joe did a good job at helping her understand that.
Yeah, I just want to point out that this is a restricted access area, and there's not retail section for merchandise in our regulations separate from the retail area for marijuana, recreational use or selling of marijuana. While this licensee might have that segregation with the restricted access area, the rules still apply because it's within the restricted access area. And, you know, I just want to make that very clear because it seems like it's, while I understand and I appreciate the fact that this is steps were put in place to prevent this in the future, and this licensee has been exemplary until this situation occurred. The fact that there were minors on premises, one of the big words right on the outside of every single one of the licensed premises doors that says restricted access area, no one under 21. There's no exception whatsoever for marijuana. While there is an exception for alcohol, there is absolutely none for marijuana. And I just want, I want that to make it clear that there is no reason. I can't think of any other circumstance other than some life or death situation where a minor under 21 should be on the premises.
You got that, and you're okay, MJ?
Yes.
Mr. Chair? A question to Mr. Holscher. He made a statement that retail, even though it might not be selling marijuana products, is still within a restricted access area. I think that's what I understood him to say. And my question was, in Juneau, and I think several other applications that we have read, they have talked about having a merchandise section. I believe in the Rainforest retail store application, and you can actually see it if you walk by their store in Juneau, where somebody could actually walk in and not have their ID checked if they turn left. If they turn right to go in where the marijuana was there was somebody there to check their ID. So, was I hearing you correctly that that irrespective of whether there's a retail operation going on not selling marijuana, that they would, all the employees would have to have handler cards?
Well, let me clarify something. Restricted access, I meant to say licensed premises. Licensed premises, nobody under 21 should be in there. And if that merchandise area is within a licensed premises, they should not allow anyone under 21 into that area regardless. The restricted access area has to be covered separately by security, by cameras, and everything else, where merchandise is a separate retail area that doesn't store, sell, or move marijuana through would not be prone to those same security requirements as a restricted access area and within a licensed premises, if that makes sense.
I'm trying in my mind to see a small building like Rainforest where you have one door, trying to figure out what's restricted access versus what's a licensed premise, and whether they need to check the ID to come onto the licensed premise, even though that, and if I understand a lot of the retail, when they draw restricted access, it's like behind the counter. So everybody in front of the counter is on the licensed premise, but not in restricted access. But if they're there to buy marijuana, they have to pass the ID check. But if in that same area there was a T-shirt, would they have to pass the ID check to buy the T-shirt to be on the licensed premise? Because that wasn't how I read several applications that I have seen, that they would have the ID check only when the person would be going to purchase marijuana, not to purchase merchandise. So, and I don't want to get off the subject here, but I need to, I guess, pay a little bit more attention to sort of what those rules are, because I remember some applications reading where there was a distinct difference as to when the business was going to check ID. Maybe that's changed. Maybe Rainforest has talked with Mr. Johnson, and they've gone in and looked at that and fixed anything that may be my misconception. But I just I wanted to make that clear. I was sort of struggling with that, but I don't want us to get off subject with this particular NLB.
I understand that, and I think it's pretty clear. Licensed premises, there should be nobody under 21 within that area.
And we would.
And I think that regardless, when you look at the definition of licensed premises, and if anybody under 21 could work a lot within a licensed premises and not be in the restricted access area, it would still be a violation.
Yeah, and I think that we do agree with Mr. Holster, and I think he clarified what he misspoke, but everybody got ID at the front door. You know, the cardinal sin that happened was through the back door, and it was, you know, this one time. Oh, go ahead, Joe. Go ahead, James.
The regulation 306325 access restricted to a retail marijuana store or states. A person under 21 years of age may not enter a retail marijuana store. That section B says each entry to a retail marijuana store must be posted with a sign that says no one under 21 years of age is allowed. The sign must not be less than 12 inches long and 12 inches wide, with letters at least 1.5 inches high, in high contrast with the background of the sign. And section C says an area of a retail marijuana store licensed premises where marijuana or a marijuana product is stocked for sale or dispensed for sale is a restricted access area. The retail marijuana store must post signs, require identification, and escort visitors in compliance with 306.710. The very first portion of that, it states that no one under 21 can enter into a retail marijuana store. And I think, just for the record, Mr. Chair, I think that topic might be just going a little off topic. I think that the board's request was to hear from the licensee and for us to do a little more research. As requested, I'd like to deliver the follow-up information that you requested from investigators in the form of a memo.
That's fine.
Okay, so I had Investigator Hamilton follow up with an interview or investigation to request video. And of course, as you guys know, they're not required to keep video past 40 days. And he was told that the video system runs in a loop with continuous loops and drops older videos from the loops. And the video was not available until February 17, 2017, which was almost a year of the time that it was requested.
We do have Mr. Hamilton's memo of 3/30/18,
okay.
and I have read it, and I appreciate him following up on that.
Okay, and I thought that was all that was going to be requested for this, as you guys wanted a response back. I think I'll any further statements or comments if the director chooses to move forward with any type of further action.
Okay, that sounds fair enough. Does this sound good? Okay, to the board?
Yes.
All right. Then we will wait to see what the director chooses to do. Thank you for coming and presenting your side of the story. And we are finished with this item for now.
So, Mr. Chair,
yes.
So we're waiting to see what the director's recommendation on this is.
We wait to see if she's going to file an accusation. If she doesn't file an accusation, then the NOV, which doesn't contain a remedy, could, I suppose, be, am I correct? The NOV can be appealed pending. No, yeah, okay.
You have a couple of options now. One is to do nothing. The director, by your delegation, can always file an accusation. You can impose a fine. You can, as I said, you can do nothing.
So, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Well, and so my opinion was that we would, as the board, especially because we've heard from enforcement and we have the licensee here before us, that then maybe it would be on us to give our thoughts and have it go the other way, not wait for the director to come to us with something, but we have all the information in front of us, and essentially us being the bosses, we should, I think we should dictate what is done or what direction the director takes from here. That's my personal opinion. Yeah. And I made my thoughts known. I'm okay with letting the licensee off the hook, so to speak, this time, but Sue, you have to realize what you did was pretty serious so far as the regulations are concerned. Even if your grandchildren never saw any marijuana, that if something happened like this again, I would suggest you get in trouble. So just know going forward, I'm not speaking to my fellow board members here, but if nothing comes out of this today, that you have to be very, very careful from here on out.
And I think that this is, you can't get, in some respects, you can't have more serious violation than having somebody in the criminal justice. You understand that. I understand that when your grandchild was a baby in a carrier, and the other one was probably pretty incessant saying, I can go pee. And I have been there and done that. But, again, that's no excuse, and I'm going to try to make light of it. I had, it crossed my mind that maybe some sort of fine might be in order. I don't know what the rest of my fellow members think. Mr. Emmett kind of made his position clear. Let me just have to talk to stick around here to Mr. Jones and Mr. Miller, see what they have to say.
Mr. Chair, I would prefer to do nothing today, and if I think if the director files an accusation, which she has the right to do no matter what we do today, if she opts not to, on some of these NOVs that she considered to be serious, but she didn't want to file an accusation, she has recommended a fine, and we've done that on a couple of NOVs. So at this point, I'm not out of mind to do anything, and we'll see what the director brings forward. If it is an accusation, I think we've had to deal with those in a more formal setting, and work from there. So I'm of the camp of we've now heard, we've gotten the written response from them, we have a written response sort of in relation to that from the investigators. Chief Holscher has basically said that he wasn't going to say much more because he's going to wait to see what the director did, and so I'm sort of that same mind at this point.
Well, I agree with Mr. Emmett's comments. This is very, very serious. I mean, it's the basics of having a marijuana facility. No one under 21 is allowed under any circumstance. So I am disappointed. I can see how it would happen. I would hope that you've taken the measures necessary to at least update your policies for the other issue. But, you are well respected in the marijuana industry, and you made a big mistake here. And you're going to have to work to get that trust back of not only them, but, as you said, the director and enforcement, everyone else. So, at this point, I guess I would, I lean towards Mr. Emmett. We all do dumb things sometimes, and sometimes those are hard lessons. I just hope you learn one here, and we'll see what happens.
All right. So we will close this for now. We'll basically wait and see what the director has to say.
That's correct, if anything.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Okay. Thank you for your patience. Okay. I suppose we can, James. Thank you for joining us. And you can go ahead and drop out now. Okay, so I guess now we can go through the rather light marijuana mailbox. Anybody see anything there that strikes their fancy?
Sure. Maybe it's something to those, but I can't hear the email requesting the May meeting. I know we talked about the 7th of May. I sort of talked to the director with my particular schedule, and we sort of come up with a different date. You and I talked a little bit at lunch, and I was just wondering if Ms. Oaks knows if there's been a more firm idea of what day in May we might be meeting.
Mr. Jones, to the chair, the date that we had in mind was May 7th. I think the board had talked a little bit about May 14th originally, but maybe that was the ABC board. But at this point, we're on May 7th.
That's the last date I heard, subject to change course.
Wow. Actually, I guess on my calendar, I don't have any meetings that day, so I guess I'm in luck.
And Mr. Chair, that would be in Anchorage. We have, I believe, the conference room in the Atwood reserved.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, James, if you're still listening, you call back so you can join us for this quick discussion on House Bill 319.
I was, yeah. I've been there for most of it. Okay, so to 319, yeah. So to my best recollection, there was discussion had about how long it should be between renewal of fingerprint cards for licensees. And the legislature had, the legislators in the particular committees had spoke boards that require fingerprints have much lengthier times in between fingerprinting than this board currently has, or this board suggested. I believe our recommendation was 3 years. And the question was asked, well, why did we recommend 3 years? Was there any debate? Were we all in agreement? There was some robust discussion, and then 3 years was a bit of a compromise between doing it every year and doing it every 5 years, as one board member had suggested. And so that we felt as a board that 3 years was prudent. It takes the burden off of the industry for having, and our staff for having to do it every year, but also is less than every 5 or 10 years, so we can keep a pretty good record of these individuals and be able to initiate background checks if need be. That particular committee was not in agreement with our position. I believe they amended it to 6 years, and then it was again amended to 10 years. There was some testimony that came in from industry that said that the industry members would support 10 years, but not after 10 years, or no longer than 10 years. I believe one individual even said no longer than 6 years, because with the rescinding of the Cole memo and the fears that the federal government may come after states if they are deemed to no longer be very strictly enforcing their regulations, that it is prudent for us to have some sort of a reasonable time frame for these fingerprints to go out. I was thankful for my comment, and then they went on without us. So that's how we arrived at where we're at, by my best recollection.
So we've been asked to do a quick resolution drafting very quickly. About 3 whereases. What's the board's thoughts on 3 versus 5 years?
Personally, I wasn't in favor of less than 5 years. So I don't like 3 years. I think 5 or 10 is better. I don't think it should be completely open-ended, because I do agree with many of my fellow industry members that it's important for us to show the federal government that we are using a robust system of regulation. But I think that the 3 years is a bit burdensome.
And Secretary Prince, we've been asked to do a resolution for Senator Josephson's, I guess, best pocket, giving our recommendation on the timeline. Brandon seems to think 5 years is okay. Any other nod? Yeah. How's 5 years sound to you?
For the background checks, right?
Background checks, last year, yeah.
Yes, that sounds good. I mean, it's a fair number, I think. I think there should be some stipulation in there where if it's found, or there should be some, I don't know, they put language in there that if they do commit a felony or something that would bar a licensee from having a license. I think that the board should be notified for any action if necessary, but I do feel that 5 years is long enough, or a good enough, a good time.
Okay.
Yeah, when we do a renewal, don't we attest that we have? When we do a renewal, do we attest that we don't have any felony or anything? I can't remember.
Through the chair, Mr. Miller, you do.
Okay. So we're basically saying every
Mr. Chair, Director McConnell and I have discussed this too, and she's comfortable with 5 years.
Mr. Chair, I think I understood Ms. Miller when they renewed, they attest to that. This change was put in because we were requiring them to be fingerprinted every time they renewed, and so this would change that. So I assume on the renewal we would ask to attest under penalty that they didn't do it. So if we find that they passed 2 renewals and suddenly we find out that their last trip to Tucson they had a felony conviction, but they didn't bother to tell Alaska, then we could get them on that, plus the fact that they swore it the last time that they hadn't done it. I know that works on some cases, and some cases work much, but because I know I got an email from an attorney that's an owner, and says, why do I have to pay $50 every year? I was sort of willing to go to 3. I'm not as comfortable as the rest of you are with 5, but I won't. I won't argue on that one.
Okay. Okay, James, I don't think we got any more questions. Thanks for getting back to us. Thanks for answering your call.
No worries. I would just like to add a little bit to Mr. Jones' comment that if it is on the application that it specifically states under penalty of perjury and references to the statute, instead of, if you don't, it's only going to be an unsworn falsification, which is the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony for that misinformation. So that would be my only request.
Oh, to change that on the form.
If it's not already there, I think my folks can clarify.
Mr. Chair, the reason why it says on the forms that a false statement of material facts is penalty of uninformed falsification is because that's what your regulation says. So I think Mr. Holscher, and please correct me if I'm wrong, James, but I think he's asking you to cite, is it a criminal statute versus our statute?
Correct.
So if that's the direction you like us to take.
I'll have to think about that a little bit. I think we should deal with this resolution and worry about the other later.
Okay, thanks, James.
Because if this bill doesn't get through by the time they adjourn, since the House bill's still in the House, we're still back to every year.
Yeah.
Now it's got to get reintroduced and go again.
So what I've got here is, whereas the National Marijuana Control Board is charged by statute with enforcing AS 1738 and AAC 306, and whereas applicants for original licenses from the Marijuana Control Board are required by statute to undergo criminal background checks, which includes submittal of fingerprints to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and whereas the Alaska State Legislature is considering House Bill 319 setting the schedule for conducting background checks for existing licensees. Now, therefore, be resolved that the Alaska Marijuana Control Board requests the Alaska State Legislature to set the schedule for FBI criminal background checks with fingerprints attached to every 5 years in House Bill 319.
So motion.
Okay. All right. So how did that sound?
That sounded just fine.
Okay. Then what do we want to do here? We're getting a way to pull this off of this thing. We pull it from the reader on my shoulder. Yeah, we just say pass. Anyway, it's fine. Say pass. The director can sign. Oh yeah, you probably take it downstairs. Stick it on the thumb drive. Okay, okay, Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Emmett?
Yes.
Mr. Miller? Yeah. And I'm a yes, so this resolution passes. Okay, we did marijuana mailbox. We heard from the Alaska Fireweed, And the only thing we have left is board comments. Talk about the agenda for the next couple of meetings. And actually got what would the deadline be for the May meeting? Or are we going to try to just hold that agenda to things that we have laid out and invite anything additional?
Mr. Chair, I think the focus of the May meeting would be to work on applications, and I would like to discuss that with Ms. Oates. Perhaps we could put something on the website within the next couple of days.
Right, that's fine.
And does May 7th work?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be in touch.
Okay, good. So why don't we do board member comments, then we'll go to executive session or an executive session, so to try to print out that resolution, and I don't think we have executive session very long. So is there a motion to go to executive? Oh, two board member comments. Start with Jones.
The only comment I had was, I think it was mid-February, I had the opportunity to accompany Steve Johnson, the enforcement person in Southeast, to do an empty store check on a retail. It was the one that I almost voted against, the one behind urgent care, and enjoyed the experience because I learned sort of how he approached it, and how that went over with the staff that were there and the owner. And it was a little bit confusing because our own planning department came in at the same time to go through their compliance check on the conditional use permit for the occupancy. And the owner, because I was on the assembly and had made some noise about Bartlett Hospital, and being a doctor, he wanted to talk to me about Medicaid. But we were confusing roles, but I appreciated that. And he's going to get back to me when he does a cultivation one, so I can be in on the first initial investigation. And I enjoyed him accommodating me and enjoyed watching the process, and considered it to be pretty thorough. And other than that, I appreciated the work being done for this meeting. I've commented several times that I really need to get into my junk novel because I'm so tired of reading other stuff. But anyway, those are my comments.
Yeah, so I'd like to thank our director and her staff. I think you guys work really hard, and you're thorough, and it's appreciated. Thank my fellow board members. 3-day meetings are long, but it's great to see we're able to get through the entire agenda. I think we work pretty well together these days. I would like to speak to my my D.C. trip. Went down to Washington, D.C., representing the Alaska Marijuana Industry Association as a member of the Western Region Canada Business Association. What was interesting, though, seemed that the legislators down there were most interested that I was a member of this board, and I kept getting introduced as the industry representative from the Marijuana Control Board, and not as the AMIA member. And some of our counterparts from Washington were there, and Washington actually sent down Rick Garza, who is essentially Washington's version of Ms. McConnell. They also sent down their public safety representative from their control board, which regulates marijuana, and they sent down their chief enforcement officer. And we were well received there and invited to go back next year, and it was proposed that this board might send some more representatives who are actually there on official state business. That seemed to go over really well with the legislators, seeing that the industry, the tribes, and the marijuana regulators were all in the same room, all carrying forward the same message. So I would suggest that this board consider that and talk about it and see maybe if we could get a couple more regulators, whether they be board members, staff, or both, to go to the D.C. trip next year. I think it's really helpful in advancing this board's agenda that we do so. Yeah, I think that's about it. Thanks to the public for bearing with us. You guys have been great, aside from the people playing the horns and flushing toilets. I wish you guys wouldn't do that anymore. But overall, good meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Great, thanks, Mr. Miller.
I would like to thank the staff. I mean, if you look at this agenda, we got through a lot of applications this time. And, I think that's a compliment to the staff and some of the applicants and their patience. So it was a good meeting. We got through a lot of applications. A year ago, we couldn't even get through a full agenda, it didn't feel like. So I'm pretty happy where we're at, and hopefully we can keep working in that direction. See you in May.
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. And I, too, would like to thank the staff and Ms. Milks, she's not staff, she's a lawyer, to get, putting this meeting together. And, of course, I know that we're a lot more tedious and tendentious. Our predecessors in this room, but we can't help it. Hopefully it was a relaxing 3 days for you. And the public, I think we did good on time. We said it was going to be 3 days, and it took us 3 days. Just looking through my notes, we had 2 3-to-1 votes. The rest of them were all 4-0. So I think that says something, not to anything but the fact that the quality of the applications that are coming in is good, the quality of the applicants that are coming in is good, and we're again trying to promote the industry. I said something to Brandon last night. I said, really, what needs to happen here is we need to, and this is as part of our role as public, how I think, and how other members think. We're trying to normalize the cannabis industry, but not necessarily normalize the use of cannabis. I want people to, whether they're elected officials or your neighbors, to recognize that the cannabis industry is their neighbors, and they're paying taxes, they're contributing. Those are pretty astounding numbers. $73 million in sales since the program has started is really a very significant number that the industry should be proud of. We should be proud of that we would do it to get those dollars. Every one of those dollars is staying in Alaska at least one more time, and the employment in the industry is 1,000 plus. Those are people who have jobs, who may 6 months or a year ago may not have had jobs. So the industry is providing employment, and they are good jobs. And so it's industry, and if people want to use cannabis, then they can knock themselves out. But we're making sure there's a good, well-regulated, fair industry here. And so I encourage the industry to look at it from that perspective and to tell that kind of story. Because by the time we have our June meeting, that figure will be getting up to $100 million. So yeah, thank you everybody who came. Thank you, Nome, as usual. Wish we have all our meetings. We get them to redraw the map so that the judicial sessions kind of converge right here in the little room. Do we do that? Yeah, this is very pleasant. So thank you. We will now go into executive session. So I will look for a motion to go into executive session.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, motion that go into executive session under AS 44.62.310 sub C sub 2 for the purposes of the director's 1-year evaluation.
It'll be the members present and the director.
Second? Yes.
Okay, Mr. Jones?
Second.
I'm just on a roll. Mr. Jones?
Oh, yes.
Yep. Okay, Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Miller? I'm a yes, so we'll turn up the telephones and we'll go down and print out that resolution. All righty.
The chairperson has disconnected. The conference will